Document lists are great, but sometimes it just makes sense to link to a single document from the root pane of your Sanity Studio project. We can do that. Let's take a look at the Structure Builder API. In this episode, we're going to be exploring a relatively small use case of the Structure Builder API. Let's give our editors a single document for site configuration stored at the root pane of our project. Now, you can use any Sanity project you want to make this work. I'm personally going to be using the blog schema that comes from the Sanity CLI when you run Sanity init. So if you want to follow along, go ahead and do that. If not, let's go ahead and get coding. All right, so after we have initialized our project and run Sanity start, we should have something that looks a little bit something like this. We've got a content navigation here. We've got post, author, category, all the things that you need for kind of a basic blog. And that comes right out of the box with that Sanity init command. The first thing we need to do, though, if we want to override the default functionality of our desk tool structure, is to tell the studio that we want to do that. And we want to override that part in our sanity.json file. Now to do this, we need to add another object in the parts array down here. And that is going to be something that follows that same pattern as the first part up there with the schema, has a name. That name is going to be the part at sanity desk tool structure. That's basically telling the desk tool, we have a new structure for you. It is going to exist at this path. So we're going to give that as well. This can be any file in your folder structure, in your project structure. For simple things like this, I usually just keep it in the root of the project. So we'll go ahead and have it be in the root at deskstructure.js. Now we also need to create that file and tell the studio what exactly we want to be changing. So let's go ahead and create a new file. We'll call it, again, deskstructure.js. And inside of this, we need to import our Structure Builder API. We do that with a JavaScript import call. So import capital S, which is the Structure Builder API, from @sanity/desktool/structure builder. That's going to give us all of the different methods and functions that we need to make a new structure. To do that, we're going to export a default function. That's what the studio is expecting. And then we're going to give it this S object and tell it that we want to create a new list as the base for our studio. So s.list, which is a method, and then we'll chain together various other methods that are on this list. The very first thing we need to do is give it some form of title. Now the default, as you can see on the left-hand side, is content. But just so we can see that things are working, let's override that and call it base. And you could also give this an ID if you wanted to. However, the studio is going to automatically create one of those for us based on our title. So let's not junk up our code with that. And then we also need to tell it what are the items that are going into this list. So there's an items method. And then inside of this, it'll take an argument of either an array or another one of these methods. So we'll go ahead and use the document type list items method. And that's going to get all of our document type list items, posts, authors, and categories. So we should only see a change in the way that the title is presented. Everything else should remain the same. So I'm going to go ahead and restart our studio, run Sanity start again. And once that compilation is done, you can see we have post, author, and category, again, coming from the s.document type list, and now a new title of base. So now we want to also add a static list item up there as well. So we're going to convert our items call over to an array. So let's surround our document type list items call with array square brackets. And then instead of this just being a standard method, we need to spread the items that we get using the JavaScript spread operator. And then before or after that, we can add a new manual list item. And we'll do that with the s.listItem method. Just like before, we can chain a number of properties off this, a number of other methods. We need to give this a title and or an ID. In this case, we'll give this a title of settings, since we are creating a site settings document. And then we also need to give it some form of child. This could be a list, it could be a set of list items, it could be a document. In this case, we do want to be a document, so we'll set our child. Our child will take an s.document. And that document, just like everything else, can have other methods chained off of it. In this case, we're going to give it a method of schema type, and that's going to tell it what kind of schema type to open when somebody opens this document. We're going to create a new schema called site settings. We don't have that yet, but we'll get to that in a second. And then we also need to give it a document ID. Now, if you already have a document ID saved that you want to use for this, paste that as a string in here. We don't have that, so we're going to create a new site settings document that will automatically happen when we open this in the browser. And then don't forget to add a comma after all of this, because this is just the first item in that array. So we'll save that in and recompile. And now you can see we have a settings item up here in the top of our base list, and the document type list still exists beneath that. When we open this, though, there's nothing to open, because again, we don't have that schema yet, and we don't have a document ID there. So let's go ahead and define that out. So in our schemas directory, we're going to go ahead and create a new file. This is going to be called site settings.js. And then we're going to create a new schema here. It's going to have a name. That name should be the document type that we gave before. So we're going to call this site settings. The title can be whatever we want it to be. We'll just make it capitalized site settings so it's easy to read. It's a type of document, and then let's define a few fields in here. Let's go ahead and have a string field that's going to be the site title. So give it a name of title, a title of site title, and it'll have a type of string. And then let's go ahead and add one more field, maybe a meta description for the entire site that we can fall back to. So this will be a name of description, a title of meta description, so it's a little bit more explicit for our users, and a type of text. And that's just going to give us a basic text area. You could put other things in here. You could make whatever global site settings you need for your site go into this document type. For us, let's just keep it simple with just these two fields. Save that in. So now that we saved that in, we now need to import it into our schema.js file. So we've got an import statement up top, import site settings from site settings.js. And then we include that in our schema types down here, site settings. Save that in, make sure you have a comma. And now we have the settings item that we manually created and this new site settings document type down here. So if we click on the settings, we now have a blank site settings to fill out. This is with that ID of site settings. So let's go ahead and give it a title. We'll call this our amazing singleton site, and just a little meta description. Again, content doesn't matter at this point. Put in whatever your site needs. We'll publish that, and now we have site settings. However, we also have in our desk tool this site settings document type, and we do want to remove that so that we don't have users accidentally creating more site settings. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's go back to our desk structure. And what we can do is we can take this array of document type list items, and because it is just a JavaScript array, we can run various array methods on it. In this case, we want to have a filter that is going to filter out any documents that appear as a singleton in our site settings, or in our first pane here. So this s.document type list items is going to have a filter on it. That filter is going to be, we have each of our list items, little arrow function, and then we're going to build an array of items that we don't want to appear inside of our document type list. So we're going to have an exclamation point, an array. This way, if we have additional singletons later on, we can put those IDs in here as well. And then we're going to use the schema type name to go in here. So we're going to say we don't want to see anything with an ID with a document type of site settings. And then we want to say if any of these are included inside of our item.getID, don't have it appear in our document type list. Save that in, and the site settings disappear. Now, just so we can flex a little bit and just so we can give our editors a little bit of a nicer experience, let's go ahead and separate our singletons from our document type list. There's a handy little method inside of Structure Builder, which is the divider method. Just takes s.divider. It's an array item inside of our items list. We save that in, and we get a nice little line separating those. So now we have a settings document linked directly from our first pane, right next to all of our document type lists. So this is just scratching the surface of what you can do with Structure Builder. This is one of the early use cases. We have an entire learning path for setting up Structure Builder available on our documentation site. I'll put a link down in the description to that. You can take it all the way through from making manual groups to making dynamic list items where you can separate posts by category or products by price. All sorts of cool things you can do with different filters in Grok and other things, as well as making new document views, which is a really cool use case for Structure Builder. And as always, if you come up with new and exciting use cases for this, be sure to share it in our community at sanity.io/community. Until next time, we'll see you around.